everyone. Welcome to the very first CEP Bulletin Staff Highlight interview. I'm Chelsea, CEP's Data Analysis and Communications Advisor. Today, we have Jenny and Paola to share their experiences with CEP. But before we jump into our questions for the day, let's jump into our introductions. So Jenny and Paola, if you'd like to share your name, pronouns, title, and then just a history of your relationship with CEP.
I can start us off. So, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Jennifer Villicaña. My pronouns are she and her, and I am CEP's Senior Project Analyst. And my history with CEP, so I began with CEP as a work study student my senior year of undergrad with their TRIO program, specifically ETS at the time. And that is actually how I first met Paola.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paola Gutierrez, pronouns she, her, ella. I currently serve as the TRIO Upward Bound College Advisor in West County school site. And yes, my history with CEP has also been long. I started off as a student for TRIO ETS and also DCAC EAOP. I was one of those students that was super extra and I was in all the college programs. So that was a while ago. And then I became a DCAC College Advisor Fellow and now with TRIO Upward Bound.
All right, thank you both of you. So having once both been an advisor and now a student to both working in CEP in very different capacities after that, we really wanted to highlight both Jenny and Paola today for their very unique and CEP-rich relationship. So now jumping into the questions for Paola, how has participating in a CEP college access program impacted you?
Thank you. I think overall, and I say it all the time, but I don't think I would be where I'm at today if it wouldn't have been for my college access programs. I did have Jenny as an advisor, and I was literally one of those students that was in her office every day that she was on campus. And it's so like wild to think about it, but it was like full circle. Like I was her student, then I kept talking to her when I was in college. We're actually like sorority sisters too. So it's just super interesting that like that happened. And then I became a college advisor fellow. And I don't think I would have been a college advisor fellow if I wouldn't have been in the college access program, because that's where like my inspiration came to come back and like serve my community. So I wouldn't have gone to Davis. I wouldn't be in grad school right now. Overall, I'm very appreciative for our programs.
That's amazing. And you very much touched on this next question, but what is the best piece of advice that you received from Jenny as an advisor, that has stuck with you? And then I feel like you kind of already talked to this, but did your experiences with Jenny light a fire for you to pursue higher education?
Yes. So I don't know if she remembers this, but it was a long time ago. Like, let's rewind 10 years ago, because that's how much almost it's been. When I was in high school, and it was my senior year. I was making my decision of where I wanted to go. And that's where I was struggling the most, because the college application process, it was stressful. But I mean, I had Jenny, I had my other TRIO advisor at the time. So I was chilling. I was doing what I had to get done. But then it came to like, where was Paola gonna go? And I was fortunate that I had options. I was one of those students that had lots of options, but also at the time I was considered like a middle class student. So I wasn't getting as much financial aid. There wasn't as many grants like now there is, shout out to all that happening now. So I remember sitting in the office with Jenny and I was crying. Like I was literally in tears. It was like during the school year, sitting in her office. And I was like, well, I don't want to go to this school, but I want to go to this school, but I don't have money and I don't know how to go about this. Like, I don't know how to talk to my dad. I don't know how to talk to my mom that I want to leave home. Like, there was just so much going on for me at the time. And I remember her vividly telling me that at the end of the day, it was my journey and like no one could tell me otherwise, and that if like the money was an issue, if there was other issues, that we were going to figure it out together. And I remember that I just sat there. She let me cry. She was just like, it's okay, like you're going to be okay. Once I made my decision, I do remember that she was the first person to give me like a UC Davis sticker. And I had that sticker all of my undergrad like on my laptop, so super like grateful for her. And I don't know if she remembers that, but I was like a hot mess. Like I was just like crying and it was so dramatic. High school, think about like high school time, what's going on in your life at the moment. That was like what was so stressful for me. And if it wasn't for her, like I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And same thing with grad school. I actually called her when I was making my decision for grad school. a year and a half ago. Same situation, you know, money problems, and she definitely guided me through my journey again and really grounded me on like what my goals are. And I feel like she's always been an amazing mentor to me, and I think she will continue to be it. So super blessed and grateful to have her for sure.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing how Jenny has been so present in like your whole journey from like high school to even like now in grad school. That makes me so happy. But I guess to like shift gears now for Jenny, what did you learn from your students and or advisors?
Yeah, so I'll share a little bit of for both. So from my students, so them being high school students, I think honestly, it just seeing how much energy, how much passion, just like perseverance, like hardworking they were, I think would just further inspire me. So when I first started as an advisor, I was a full-time like college advisor with DCAC and EAOP. And at the time, I was also going through similar struggles as some of my students that first year of like, what should I do next? As some of my students were starting to apply for college, I was starting to think about grad school. So it was really great to almost be in parallel with them of like, okay, we're going to apply together. We're applying to financial aid together. We were doing all these steps together. And I think what I just really learned from my students was just to always keep going no matter what. So I really super appreciated my students from Deanza. As far as the advisors that I had the pleasure of working with throughout my time as a DCAZ regional manager, gosh, that I honestly can say that I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for them. I wouldn't be the leader that I am today if it wasn't for them. I really, really struggled my first years in a supervisor role, not only because I was very close in age. Some were even older than me at the time when I started supervising folks. And I really, really struggled with, what did it mean to be a supervisor? What did it mean to be quote unquote professional in this space, right? And it was challenging. So I had to learn the hard way of really stepping into my leadership and what it meant to be a leader that meant like authentic or that was authentic to my values, to my way of seeing things, and whether that meant pushing back to maybe the norm, or whether that meant advocating not only for them but for me as well. I think I really just oh, definitely, my the advisors had the pleasure of working with the last few years, because they pushed me. They pushed me, and we learned together what it meant to, especially during the pandemic, what it meant to not only take care of others, because I think that came very natural, especially in the service field that we're in, but how to take care of myself and lead by example. And I think that really served my team well during the pandemic, and it's something that I continue to hold as I continue in my professional journey. So it's like, we cannot do right by our students or by our staff, whoever we support, if we don't do right by ourselves and take care of ourselves. So we can't fill others cups if we don't fill our own. And that is something that I continue to live by, and that is something that surely the advisors I worked with taught me, and I am eternally grateful for.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Jenny. I do have another question. How does it make you feel to see Paolo working in higher education?
The first thing that comes to mind is pride. I'm super, super proud of Paola. I think just to see her blossom from, like she mentions, her high school days to now in graduate school and working with students herself, and just it's a full circle moment. I think it just makes me feel just again tremendously proud of her continuing to uplift her community. And I think that's what it's all about. As we climb, we also bring others with us, and I think this is like the epitome of that. So I just it's a lot of joy for me, and I know that there's more to come for her future, and what she's pursuing in graduate school, which I think is amazing. So yeah, I'm proud of you.
Thank you to both of you for sharing about like your relationship with each other, and your experience as both like a student and even advisor working for CP. Now I want to pivot to like more career specific questions, considering that both of you are in different places within each of your educational and like career journeys. So the first one, this is open to both of you, is what has been the highest point and most challenging of your professional careers so far?
Highest point for me, I mean, because I've been a college advisor now for a bit. I was doing the math the other day. I was like, oh, like yeah, it's about to be 4 years. Like I didn't think that it like flies by. Definitely being with the students during their best and like lowest points for them. Because it takes me back to like when I was a student and I remember how I would lean on my advisor, right? Which was Jenny, like how I would just go to her for everything and then slowly how it blossoms into not just being like college related things, but anything really, right? And really knowing, like they know, like, okay, you're my mentor. Like I know that you're not my best friend, right? Things like that. And also like recently, so it was last week, I'm walking on campus at my school for like my grad school classes, and I saw one of my students on campus and she was like, oh my gosh. And so it was just like crazy. So I'm like, oh my God, you were literally just in high school like last year and now you're about to start college. So it was like we were having a whole moment, right? And then like she was actually shy to come and talk to me. Obviously, she's at college her first week, but we were talking and like texting throughout the whole like feelings that she was having of like starting. So that was really nice that I was still able to be there for her. So those are like one of the highest points that I can think about right now specifically. But to sum it all up, anytime that I'm able to talk to students or see where they're at or running into them like in the community and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what are you up to now? Things like that. Lowest, I think overall has just been imposter syndrome, whether that's in academia or even like in my career right now. I know that I have a super validating community within CP, right? Most of us are first gen. We were like growing up in the same communities, typical like that. But then it's also just like, should I be here? Like, was it an accident that I'm here? Right. It's just like kind of like those little like negative thoughts that come to you. And the same thing with like being in school, like, oh, same, all those feelings come up of like, should I have done this? Maybe I should have waited, or maybe I should have just not done this, or, especially when you see other peers that they're like doing other stuff in their lives and you start comparing yourself. So I think that's super real and no one really talks about it, or like even graduating from undergrad, right? Like most of us first gen students, we build it up where it's like, okay, once you're done with undergrad, like you've made it, you've done it. And then you're like, now what? And then you're kind of just sitting there and you're like, well, now I'm sad because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I was supposed to be in school. So it's like all these feelings. And I think that's what I mean by lowest. And then just balancing now school and being there for my students. So when they come and they're like, you don't understand, Ms. Gutierrez. And I'm like, but I do. Like while you're applying for FAFSA, I'm also applying for FAFSA, and things like that. But those are little things that I can think about right now.
I think for me, very similar in terms of the highest points, both with when I think about my former students, but also the different advisors that I had the pleasure of working with, seeing them, go into their next steps, whether it was college, whether it was career or graduate school, and then learning till this day, I stay in touch with a handful of them. And just like learning like what is the latest and greatest that they are doing, and but also like learning what are some of the challenges and thought partnering on those things, and I think it just brings me a lot of joy to be able to support them as much as I can. Clearly I don't know it all, but I'm like I don't mind thought partnering and together we can figure it out. I pride myself in being resourceful, so I'm always like, all right, let's figure it out. Google is there, or like network, we can tap into it, see what we can figure out. So I think highest point till this day is being able to still have those relationships, both with former students and advisors. And then most challenging, I think there's been, different challenges throughout my career. I think the one that comes to mind, that I think, and people will always come across is definitely learning how to navigate bureaucracies and all like red tape, so to speak. And depending on what role you're in, or depending on what unit, department, campus, you're in, it might look different. But I think just you know learning how to navigate those, and really leaning into your communication skills and strengthening both like written and oral and building relationships with different folks is super, super important. And so for me, I think it was just a matter of like, okay, time and figuring out how do you communicate with a difficult, even as early as when I was an advisor with a difficult parent. I didn't have too many of those, but there was some like helicopter parents, or all the way to like, navigating conversations with school leadership or within our own campus. So it was, it's been an array of things. And so I think that's something that will always come up. And so just knowing how to navigate that with grace, and then always having like our end goal in mind, like always knowing your why. At the end of the day, we're all here for our students. And so I think that's where I found success, is like always leaning into our why and what brings us together. What do we have in common? Our students. And so that's how I've been able to navigate that challenge.
Thank you both of you for reflecting on your careers in this way. And I also agree that for me, like one of the highest points for me too is just also the students and remembering our whys. So the next question is something that I'm also very interested in, but both of you being in different points of your career journeys, what advice would you give to new professionals who are just starting out?
I can start this off. I think the very first thing would be is you belong. So yes, imposter syndrome is real, but I also think that it's time we really, really, turn around the narrative. It's like, no, we're meant to be here. And then how they say like, well, if there's not a seat at the table, I'll bring my own seat. But I always like to say, well, I'll be the centerpiece. Like I don't have to bring the seat. I'll just be on the table, right? And it's kind of something like in a lot of Latin American culture, or even within my own family, like centerpieces at parties is a big deal. So I don't know, Paola, if you know about that. Like people fight for them at the end of the day. So anyway, so that's just kind of how I've really dealt with that. Of you belong. You are meant to be here. If you got that acceptance, whether it's at school, graduate school, college, or you got that offer letter, like don't question it. You are meant to be where you're meant to be. So I think that would be the first thing. And the second thing that actually my first manager as an advisor, and really offered to me, was a piece of advice. So she was on her way up to retire, and I think she really just spoke like candidly of the realness of burnout within the profession, and spoke to the challenges she had to navigate early on in her career. And it really served as an example of some of the things of what not to do. Like she was very candid, like don't do these things, like set these boundaries early on. And I think that really, really helped me to set those healthy boundaries, and to ensure that I constantly assessed what were my priorities, not only professionally but personally. Again, I go back to we can't do right by our students if we're not well ourselves. And so that is another thing that I would offer, that was offered to me. Like, really evaluate what matters to you, what are your priorities, and what do you need in order to be well. Because this field is a lot of work. It's hard work because it's hard work. So just knowing how to navigate that. So those would be two of the first things I would say.
Yes, I definitely echo everything that Jenny has said, because I'm like thinking about it and I'm like, yep, live by all of that. And another thing just to add on, which has taken time for me to learn and still like working on it myself, but like genuinely asking for help. Like I know we tell students that all the time, and we tell ourselves, and we're like, no, yeah, just advocate for yourself, like ask for help. But I like truly mean it, especially, like I always say, blessed to be in the CEP community where like I know I can lean on like my supervisor. And similarly, like when I was in DCAC, AOP, like I always knew like my RM was who I could go to, or other RMs, right? Similarly, right now in Trio, like I know that if I need support with something, asking for it, right? Because I think as a doer, as like a first gen Latina, like it was always like, no, I got it. Like I'll figure it out. Like I don't need help from nobody. Like I got this. But reality is that when we're in our roles, adding to what everything Jenny said, hard work, everything, you do need some help sometimes, or you need to take that day off. I know it sounds super wild, but it's like, no, yeah, like if you're not feeling well, you should probably not go to work like that, especially because the work that we do, we like project onto our students, right? So like if you're irritated, you're having a rough week, okay, how about you take Friday? How about you take Monday to reset and like really remember your why, kind of everything that we've been talking about. So I think overall, asking for help and advocating for yourself and knowing your needs, because that's super hard sometimes when you're so caught up in like what you need to get done and like supporting students. And sometimes we get lost along the way.
Thank you so much for your wisdom, both of you. I definitely need to take some of that advice too, so I appreciate hearing it from the two of you. So we're almost done. I have two questions left, but they very much are related to each other. So what is one of your most memorable experiences with CEP, and what has led you both to continue coming back to CEP?
I think for me, one of the most memorable experiences, it's not just like one, but I think every single summer that I had the opportunity to participate in College Advising Institute with DCAC and EAOP, so getting to meet all, recent college graduates coming in and stepping into their leadership to be a college advisor for high school students, I think would always not only bring me like new energy, but I would always walk away from that month-long training like inspired, re-energized. It would continue to like fuel my why. And I think for me, those are some of my fondest memories, longest stays, but fondest memories for sure. Not just as a regional manager, but also as an advisor myself. I remember my first day very clearly till this day, when I stepped into that space and just like thinking like, wow, there's like other people that look like me in this space, number one. Number two, like we're all in this for the same like purpose. Like we all have the same why. Like I was just like amazed. And then I was amazed to see so many like leaders, CP leaders and DCAC, EAOP, RMs, again, that look like me. And I was just like, I don't know, I was like in a dream. I just was amazed. And so those have been some of my most memorable experiences. And then for continuing to come back to CP, I will summarize it with it's the people. I think I wouldn't be where I am today in my like career or just like in my overall like space, if it wasn't for the many mentor or mentorship relationships I've had with different folks throughout CP, with my colleagues that I got to quote unquote grow up with in this professional space. um, you know, CEP, like different folks in CEP also had a really big part in my academic journey post college. So when I first pursued my master's at USF, and then when I pursued my doctorate at USC, it was CEP folks that wrote my letters of recommendation. It was CEP folks that like inspired me to go to that next step. So again, it's the people, and I'm very happy to be here.
Yes. Times 100 retweet everything. I agree, echoing again everything that Jenny has been saying. I think I don't like it puts it into perspective, and I don't realize it until I talk with other folks about their work environments. Because I'm like, oh, like, yeah, this is what I work in, this is what I do, this is my career. And really talking about like, hey, we have events, now that we're able to because of the pandemic. And it kind of leads me to my next point, where for me it's all been like a blur, because I'm like, everything that I've experienced has been great, right? We've been together through it all. I feel like all of us go through the roller coaster. Okay, when we had to shift into virtual life, okay, we're all in this together. Okay, now we're going to be back in person, we're like hybrid. Okay, let's figure this out together. But my point from that is that when I talk to others about their work environment, it really puts into perspective that not everyone gets the opportunity that I have to be surrounded by everything that Jenny said, folks that look like me, folks that understand me, come from similar backgrounds. For me, that's like my typical work environment. But then when I talk to others, they're like, No, girl, that's not how it is. Like we don't all have PD like you do. We don't all have like, events where we're celebrating each other's cultures, we're celebrating each other's backgrounds, like we're like appreciative of each other. We learn together. And literally what Jenny said about like being in grad school right now, the folks that supported me through that whole journey were all CEP folks. As like, so it's just, I think we're all very supportive of each other. We give each other constructive feedback. We're here for each other through the highs and the lows too. All the environment that we're fostering for our students, I do think we exemplify that as a staff. And I think that that's been most memorable for me, just my whole journey here. And I do think everything happens for a reason. I'm always going to be coming back to CP one way or another. This is where I'm at today. Hopefully I'll be here for a long time. And then if not, I'll make my way back one way or another. So I think it's super cool and grateful that like Jenny was also able to like come back and, be able to navigate and see her also like do all her amazing things. And thank you so much for like having us today. I probably rambled a lot, but it's okay. Just know that I love it and I appreciate you all.
No, you're good. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing like all of your wisdom, all of your reflections. My favorite part was definitely hearing about your relationship and how the two of you have continued to stay in each other's lives for like the past 10-ish years, which is really amazing. And which I really think is like, beautiful about CEP really is the people and like the relationships like the one that you two have. So thank you so much for sharing with not only me, but I'm excited for the rest of CEP to hear all of the reflections and wisdom that the two of you have. I'm excited for the rest of CEP to hear our very first staff highlight interview, and hopefully there will be more. Thank you.